So it wasn't any specific mission per se. It was just the dynamic of the work, right? Like I was dressing up like an Afghan, having like they had women come out and show us how to do like makeup and stuff like that so that we could blend in like literal like professional makeup artists and stuff. And that was kind of cool. It was like we're actually blending in, like they're making us look like these people. It was kind of cool getting out and seeing the Afghan world, how it functions normally during the day, whereas normally I only saw it at night when I'm booting the door in. So that was cool. And then I worked with some really good people, like all the guys. That was my first time working with Red Squadron from SEAL Team 6, which I had worked with Blue Squadron before. And forgive me, guys, if there's any Blue Squadron guys that hear this, but I could not stand those guys. I couldn't stand them. Most of the Rangers in Third couldn't stand them. Um, but the Red Squadron guys I worked with were awesome. I mean, superstar professional dudes. They treated me as one of the team, and I was like, dude, this is awesome. And then the ground branch guys that we were working with, a bunch of former Rangers were there. And so I had that commonality with them too. And they were just super cool, very professional dudes. I mean, mind you, these ground branch guys are typically 20-year retired Rangers, Delta Force dudes, SEAL Team 6 guys, 2-4 SDS, whatever, SF guys, SEALs, whatever, from all the different soft backgrounds. A lot of Marines actually in there too. But they're very seasoned fighters. At that time, it may be a little different because they got seasoned while at Ground Branch because the war was relatively new. But these guys were really seasoned, very professional, career war fighters. So it was good working with them.
I've got to ask because you are not the first person who's made that comment about Blue Squadron working with Rangers. A guy gave an interview a couple months ago on a different show, and he said almost verbatim, word for word, the exact same thing. What was and by the way, I know some guys who are on Red Squadron. I agree with you. Like there are some dudes that were over there. I don't know if you would have crossed paths, but like they're like that dude. Like they are great Americans, and you can just tell. Even for me, who's like just a regular dude, it's like, yeah, that guy can flip a switch. That's pretty obvious after 10 minutes. The Blue Squadron guys, though, what was your issues with them?
Well, they were just unprofessional. They treated Rangers like you should just be dead. Like you should be dead. Don't even talk to me, kind of stuff. They treated everybody like that besides their own people. And now this is just the squadron that I happen to work with. So I'm sure there was guys there that were solid. Um, but they just were unprofessional. They didn't treat guys with respect. I mean, like, dude, they're the same task force. We're assigned to the same unit. We were working for JSOC like you guys are, but there was that, and then physical fitness lacking physical fitness. I saw that on times where dudes from there were just out of shape. I mean, they looked it too. I mean, not only did they look out of shape, but they were literally out of shape because there's some guys out there that look like a bunch of mongoloids. They're just big dudes, maybe have a pot belly on them, but they can go forever. That wasn't the case with some of these guys. I was amazed at the lack of fitness with some of these guys. And this is in the very beginning, like up until probably '07 time frame. After that, the guys that I worked with was mainly Red Squadron and Gold Squadron, and they were all like, I wouldn't say anything bad about those guys, good guys.
Did you, when you were working with the Blue Squadron guys, did the Rangers and them have to be kept separated? Like, were there actual arguments and fights breaking out between the two?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, not fights like physical fights, but altercations. Because dudes would talk down to our guys and our guys wouldn't take it. They were like, "Who the heck do you think you are?" You know what I mean? Uncle Sam's paying for this, not Nate, not SEAL Team 6, you know what I mean? Like for example, I had to deal with this as a platoon sergeant much later in my career, so it was still going on then. And I can't remember which squadron it was, but it was out of JBAD. And I was actually at Bastion as the mortar platoon sergeant, kind of working as an LNO. This is my last combat deployment. So this is in 2013 or 13 or 14. I think, yeah, I think it was into 13, maybe beginning of 14. And some of my guys were up at Jalalabad, which was like that's where SEAL Team Six's main element was. Like they were out of JBAD over there, whereas Rangers had the south, the north, and spread out all over the place. And then Delta Force guys had their little spot. So I went up there to check on my guys because my guys are kind of complaining to me, but they didn't really complain until I got there. And I said, hey, what's going on? And the dudes were like, hey, Sergeant, the the SEALs won't let us use the gym. We're not allowed to use the gym. And not only that, they had two bathrooms. They had a bathroom that only SEAL Team 6 could use, and a bathroom that all the local nationals and Afghans and Rangers could use. And I was like, what the heck? And mind you, I had worked with a lot of SEAL Team 6 guys at the time. So I just busted up into their jock and I was like, hey, what's up? And I found a dude that I knew. I was like, what's up with this, man? Why are you guys treating my boys like trash over there? I'm like, I wouldn't expect that from you guys. And this was a guy that I had worked with. I mentioned it to him, and I guess maybe he just didn't think about it. And he's like, that is messed up. I didn't realize that was going on, and changed it right there on the spot. But I told him, I was like, I need the code for the gym, and my dudes are going to work out anytime they want to. And they're going to use the same bathrooms you guys use. I mean, they're freaking Americans like you are. So it kind of pissed me off. But once I confronted one of those guys about it, he was like, oh, I wasn't aware that this was happening. And then he changed it. So
Did would something like that ever occur on the Army side? Like, did Delta treat Rangers? Because I know earlier in the interview you said it was a pretty good relationship. Like, is that something that ever would have occurred between the unit and Rangers being talked down to like that?
I can't speak for everybody, but I highly doubt it. You know what I mean? I highly doubt it. There were times so the only negative like time that I ever worked with CAG or Delta Force was when I was in RRC running the Afghan Reconnaissance unit. I was running a team up in northern Afghanistan at the time. They had Delta Force troop there and a Ranger platoon. And I would go out every other night because so the way they worked it up there was Delta Force went out and hit a target, and then the next night Rangers would. That way they rotate and they're not getting burnt out going back to back to back. So sometimes both would go out the same night, but a lot of times it would alternate. So I was going out with a Ranger platoon one night, and then the Delta Force troop that was there. One of my old platoon leaders from Ranger Battalion was the troop commander. So he was like, "Hey, dude, come out with us." So I was going out with them, and I had, as an RRC guy, my job is doing low vis, recce type stuff during the daytime. So going out on assault missions is not really my job anymore. But to occupy the time, the busier you stay, the faster the time goes. So I would do that. So what I found out was that the guys were lacking battlefield interrogators. Like they were using their assaulters for battlefield interrogation. I'm like, dude, I could do that for you guys, and it frees up an assaulter. So I became the battlefield interrogator for the Ranger platoon, going out with them and going out with the CAG guys as well. But then our rotations, our deployment rotations are overlapped a little bit. So then a new Delta Force troop came in, and I didn't really know any of the guys there. Some of them were cool, but one of the team leaders, who was a former 3rd Ranger Battalion guy, by the way, I talked to him. I was like, hey, brother, this is what our capabilities are. This is what I can provide you with RRC as far as intelligence, reconnaissance stuff. I said, I can also, if you guys need an extra dude on the target for battlefield interrogation, I can go out there and do that stuff. And he goes, he's like, you're a liability. He's like, I would never take you out. You're a liability to go on target with me. He's like, if I need somebody to carry heavy things, I'll call you. And I was like, nah, dude. I was like, I'm not here to be your beast of burden. I'm offering my capabilities to you. If you don't want them, you ain't got to take them. But I mean, the dude was the same rank as me. We're both E8s, and the dude was talking to me like that. I'm like, get out of here. So but that was the only time. And I will say that Delta Force troop was not very good. The Ranger platoon that was hitting targets, I was going out with them. And I ended up going out with these guys, even though they didn't want me to, because I was out with the Rangers one night. And then these guys called the Rangers and said, hey, can you send your battlefield interrogator over here? We need him. We're overwhelmed. And so it was me. And I show up, and this guy looks at me all pissed off, like, what are you doing here? I'm like, you called for battlefield interrogation. So I started going out with both of them, and I watched how they operated. And the Ranger platoon there was way smoother and cleaner with everything that they did on target than those guys. So
that's interesting. It sounds like in that case, it was more of a one dude who maybe was a bad apple, had an ego. What's crazy about that story is you're also in RRC. You're also in a special mission unit yourself. You're a tier 1 operator as well. It's not like, some bum off the street just walked onto the base and tried to squeeze his way in. I mean, some people have egos and they just refuse to put their egos aside. SEAL Team 6 Delta, you get to have the opportunity as a former special mission unit member to work with both. You've seen both. Compare and contrast kind of the differences in culture, skills, and then if you had to pick one for a hostage rescue or a gunfight, which unit would you go with?
That's a good question. Yeah, I've worked with both of the guys. I've worked with SEAL Team 6 as much as I've worked with CAG. But like I said, those issues that I dealt with the Blue Squadron guys kind of gave me a bad taste in their mouth. Not only that, the issues that I dealt with my guys in the platoon, that's just unprofessional. Like no unit should treat anybody like that. And that's not the rest. I have a lot of great buddies from that organization, superstars, man, like good dudes. But I never had any professionalism issues except for that one-off instance with that one guy from the Delta Force guys. But what I've seen as far as like operating and doing operations, like physically going on missions and the way they conduct themselves, I've seen really good from SEAL Team 6, but I've seen across the board, it seems to be a higher standard with the Delta Force guys. And, I have a bias too because they are Army and because a lot of them come from Ranger Battalion. So they think a lot of the way we think, they operate a lot of the way we think, whereas the SEALs are just different. You know what I mean? So that could be part of it.
So you would take Delta then if you had to do like a hostage rescue mission. Your preference would be get the
If I was
unit
the
over.
president, that's who I would choose.
That's awesome. And it's neat to get the perspective of someone with ties to both communities who can be unbiased. Because obviously, SEAL Team 6 guy, he's always going to pick himself, right? And a Delta guy is always going to pick Delta. I like getting the other people who work with them, their opinion. All right, last question.